Discover the incredible truth. My wedding day was shockingly abandoned, exposed by 12 unbelievable whispers. Emily Lane stood in front of the mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted her bouquet. The soft ivory petals felt delicate and yet weighed heavy with the anticipation of what was to come. Her heart raced with excitement, a symphony of joy vibrating through her as the early morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's. Yet, lurking underneath that thrill was a creeping shadow of doubt. The whispers had started early, rumors skimming through the parlor like a subtle breeze. Was it true? Had David really been feeling the pressure from her family? Would he even show? As she fidgeted with her veil, snippets of conversation flooded her mind. A doubt here, a stare there. Yes, just an artist, Emily. What about his future? Her mother's voice coiled around her. Family values, the very fabric of Maplewood life, echoed prominently in this moment of supposed happiness. What if David wasn't the traditional partner they envisioned? The bubbling excitement of the day began to feel like a boiling cauldron, the heat almost suffocating. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just moments before she would walk down the aisle, David pulled her aside, urgency flashing in his eyes. Emily, he started, his voice low but laced with distress. A chill slithered down her spine. She recognized that look. I can't do this. The words crashed into her like tidal waves, splintering her reality. The gasps of the guests' friends, family, neighbors sounded like a thunderstorm rolling in, drowning her anticipation in the chaos of disbelief. Her heart shattered, pieces scattering across the delicate fabric of her wedding day. A hyphen in the story of their lives. The bouquet dropped from her hands, tumbling to the ground, as panic clawed at her throat. What do you mean you can't? She whispered, desperately searching for clarity in his wild gaze. The betrayal bloomed, thick as the scandal she sensed rippling through the crowd. Questions bombarded her brain. Was it her family? Was it him? Why now? In the days that followed, Maplewood buzzed with gossip. She stumbled through the town like a ghost, her thoughts overtaken by anger and hurt swirled in a desperate dance of sorrow. How could David leave her standing alone? With shame heavy on her chest, Emily grappled with the deep contradiction of loving someone while feeling utterly betrayed. Her family, with their tight grip on tradition, loomed large like shadows creeping into her mind, making her question everything she had believed about love and partnership. Seeking solace, she visited Clara, the wise and weathered neighbor. Clara spun stories of resilience and truth. Her eyes twinkled with a knowing that urged Emily to confront her fears, revealing her broken pieces as the woman she thought she knew transformed before her. Just as she began to find strength buried within her sorrow, shocking secrets about David emerged, reigniting the tumult within her heart. Would she have the courage to stand against the expectations of her loved ones, or would she tie her identity to whispers long hidden? With all that remained unspoken, the weight of uncertainty grew thicker, intertwining her sense of belonging with her yearning for authenticity. The pivotal moment loomed, teasing her with questions that thrummed with urgency. Could she forgive David and redefine her path, or would she forever carry the scars of abandonment? The town had woven its narratives tight, breaths held in suspense for what Emily would choose next. Emily's heart felt like it was being placed under a microscope, scrutinized from every angle as she walked through Maplewood, her thoughts swirling in a cyclone of anger and confusion. Each corner she turned seemed to echo with whispers of betrayal. Was she just the girl David had left behind, or was she more than that? The following days unfolded with an unsettling rhythm. The once jubilant anticipation of her wedding day morphed into an oppressive sense of dread. Each morning she stared into the mirror, trying to piece together the woman who had been so certain of her future. Was I wrong to believe in him? Each question pulled at the frayed edges of her self-identity. Her friends reached out, their voices laced with sympathy, but their words washed over her like fleeting shadows. Deep inside, developing a sense of self was becoming an urgent, chaotic battle. Just sitting at the kitchen table felt like grappling with ghosts. The cozy familiarity of home had turned into a battlefield where insecurities clashed with remnants of happiness. Determined to dig deep and uncover her own potential amidst the ruins of her dreams, Emily decided to apply for an art class at the Maplewood Community Center. Art had always been a refuge for her, a tapestry of expression woven through her thoughts. Perhaps it was time to rediscover that sanctuary. As the first class approached, an electric tension coursed through her. She stood in front of the classroom, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, each one imbued with the potential for connection. The instructor, a woman named Jo, emanated a fierce passion for creativity. The way Jo spoke about art, its ability to transform and heal, struck a chord deep within Emily. Art reflects your truth, Jo stated, her voice confident and soothing. And in creating, you'll discover sides of yourself that you may have buried. Emily latched onto those words, a tether to something profound. With each stroke of paint on the canvas, the colors became a language of their own, vivid reds for anger, soft blues for sorrow, and bright yellows shimmering with hope. For the first time in days, Emily allowed herself to confront emotions that had scared her: the weight of betrayal, the glittering remnants of love, and the flickering flame of resilience. As she poured herself into her work, Emily felt layers of her identity unraveling. New questions arose. Who was she without David? What aspirations had she shelved away in the name of love? Each session left her grappling with fragments of herself she had neglected. Emily realized that she had hidden her own artistic aspirations beneath the layers of expectation from her family and the love she deferred to David. By the end of the first week, wind swept through the doors of the community center, and a warmth enveloped Emily. She saw glimpses of confidence shining through her art, pushing her to embrace the future with resolve. Yet, with newfound clarity came haunting memories of David's absence. On a particularly foggy day, while painting a piece depicting her feelings about abandonment, an old friend, Mia, visited with coffee in hand. Conversing lazily, Mia mentioned that she had seen David. The unease bloomed again, thickening the air between them. He still talks about you, she said cautiously. Each word felt like a volley of arrows, ready to pierce the carefully constructed armor Emily had begun to wear. The personal development journey she embarked on began to twist. Fate seemed intent on pulling the old wound back into the light. Emily's determination wavered. She could either choose to empower herself further or allow the past to drag her under. As Mia's revelation sank in, a question ignited within Emily, challenging her newfound resolve. What would happen if she confronted David? With her heart racing for reasons she didn't fully comprehend, she faced an intriguing crossroad. Would she allow her art to speak for her, or would she seek a visceral encounter with the man who had left her shattered? An electric tension buzzed in the air. Everything was poised for a revelation. The moment had arrived where choices would redefine her identity. Emily stared blankly at the half-finished canvas, colors melding into a chaotic blend that mirrored her turmoil. Each brushstroke felt like a dual existence, one part yearning for closure with David, the other determined to carve out her own identity. For the first time in years, she had the opportunity to mold her future, but the echoes of the past were relentless. In the deep corners of her mind, the phantom of David's presence loomed, whispering doubts that wrapped around her resolve. They were the memories of stolen glances, shared laughter, and dreams of a shared future, all now tainted with betrayal. Emily slammed her brush down, splattering paint across the palette. Was confronting him a step backward? Jo stepped behind her, observing the growing tension on Emily's face. You're wrestling with something, she said softly, her eyes scrutinizing yet kind. Let it out. I can't shake the feeling that I need to talk to him, Emily admitted, the confession bitter on her tongue. But what if it just opens the wound all over again? What if I can't walk away from that? Facing fears ain't easy, Jo replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But sometimes the only way to reclaim your power is to confront what's haunting you. Think about what you want for yourself, not what he represents. The intensity of Jo's words ripped through Emily, striking a chord deep enough to stir suppressed anger. It was useless to keep running from David's shadow. It was time to shift her narrative. If she spoke to him, it would be about her journey, her choices, her healing. With this realization came a tentative sense of empowerment. To command her story would mean facing her past with clarity. The week rolled on, and as each class passed, Emily filled her canvas with images that punctured her feelings of heartbreak and rebirth. The debate over confronting David pushed her art further than mere emotion. It demanded authenticity. On particularly hard nights, she would work until her fingers ached, pouring every fragmented thought into her creations. Each finished piece laid another brick on the foundation of her rediscovered self. But with each stroke of paint, the anticipation of the inevitable conversation swelled within her. If she chose to seek him out, how would she show up? Would she carry bitterness? Or would her resolve reflect a woman who had learned to lean into her own strength? One Friday evening, her work from the week went on display at a small local gallery. The room buzzed with energy, with friends gathered to celebrate and admire her creations. Emily's pulse quickened as she pointed out the pieces that represented her emotional journey. Everyone's compliments felt like fresh balm to her wounds, reminding her of the resilience she was learning to embrace. And then as she turned, she spotted a familiar figure in the doorway. The world slowed as she locked eyes with David, the very specter that drove her to paint. He looked slightly older, his expression mingling surprise with something else, regret? Suddenly, the urge to retreat filled her, but she stood rooted in the moment. This was the very reason she had torn herself free from her past. The gallery crowd faded into the background as she stepped forward. David approached cautiously, uncertainty etched into his features. In a flash, Emily had a choice. A moment of confrontation that could either heal her or pull her back into despair. "Emily," he began, but she cut him off, the words bursting forth, echoing with purpose. "This is not just about us anymore," she asserted, the foundations of her identity solidifying with every syllable. "I'm done hiding from how I feel. It's my turn to speak my truth." The air crackled with tension, the crowd around them becoming mere spectators of an impending storm. The past felt turbulent but also liberating as she prepared to face whatever came next. Would she be able to assert her new identity? Or would David's presence encapsulate her in a net of doubt yet again? The moment had come to confront her choice, and Emily felt every nerve ending, tingle in anticipation of the revelation. The tension in the air was palpable, and for a brief moment, the world around Emily and David dissolved into a fog of uncertainty. She could feel her heart pounding, urge to flee twisting her insides. Yet, as she held on to the grounding notion of this being her moment, her self-assertion, she stayed rooted in place. "Emily," David said again, this time with a hint of pleading in his tone. He stepped closer, vulnerability flickering in his eyes. I've needed to talk to you too." For the first time she recognized the weight of his gaze. It was not the gaze of the man who once held her heart. It was a man confronting the consequences of his actions. And though anger bubbled just beneath the surface, Emily felt a clear distinction. This was about her journey now, not just their shared history. "You may have something to say, but I want you to understand that whatever you say can't erase what happened," she replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "This is my truth, and now it's time I reclaim it without your influence." David looked taken aback, his expression shifting. "I thought I could explain. I thought you'd understand why." Emily had to refrain from scoffing. "Understand? You took a path that left me behind, shattered my dreams. But I'm not here to rehash the past for your benefit. I want you to see me as I am now, whole on my own." The swirl of emotions crashed like waves, yet she felt an unusual warmth spread through her chest. Her passion wasn't just for painting anymore, but for speaking the words that had long been trapped inside her. This was her moment of creating boundaries, of asserting who she had become through art and experience. "I've poured everything into my work," Emily continued, her confidence building. "Each piece a reminder that I am more than what we were. I fought for my voice and my autonomy, and I'm not giving that up for you." David's eyes softened, and she could almost see the gears turning in his mind. But this was not about parsing his regrets. It was about her living truthfully. As she studied his reaction, she realized he wasn't the only one morphing in this moment. There were ugly scars, yes, but they were also lessons that propelled her forward. "I didn't think you could stand here, strong and demanding your truth," he admitted reluctantly. "I thought I would find someone broken, and maybe I came to seek absolution." "That's where you're mistaken," she said firmly. "This is not about you finding forgiveness. This is me embracing my journey, and it involves moving on." You should be aware that I won't falter in my progress just because of your past involvement in my life. As she took a breath, searching for calm amidst the swirling emotions, the realization hit her. This was more than a confrontation. This was an unveiling. Every brushstroke on her canvas symbolized her fight to reclaim dignity and strength. Facing David became a summation of the months leading up to this moment where her art and passion fused into a resilient identity, marked by self-discovery. In the distance, she could feel her friends watching, their presence igniting the flames of determination within her. This newfound strength wasn't born from anger. It was derived from love for herself, her journey, her art. David was mistaken if he thought she was stuck. Emily took one more stride toward him, asserting her newfound voice louder than the hesitance that echoed behind him. I'm not broken, you were part of a process that led me here. I'm becoming someone, David. The soft murmur of the gallery rushed back into focus, and as she turned slightly, catching the supportive smiles of her friends, Emily felt the last remnants of doubt dissipate. This moment was hers, not just within the gallery walls but in every breath after. Yet, as she stepped back, she sensed the lingering question that inevitably accompanied every new beginning. Was she ready to carve out a future unshackled from her past completely? David's presence prompted another revelation. Healing was a journey, not a destination. And somewhere within her, the resolve was forming not only to take a step forward but to redefine what that path looked like. Emily, he voiced uncertainly once again, igniting an instinctive awareness within her. They were still tethered with threads of unfinished business, but their moment was fast transforming. Suddenly, he took a step back, as if preparing to walk away. I hope you can forgive me, he murmured quietly, leaving her with a choice suspended in the air. Would she extend that forgiveness, or was she prepared to let the past slide into obscurity, establishing her trajectory entirely free of its influence? The gallery buzzed around her, but in that moment, all she could focus on was the next brushstroke in her life's canvas, one that could release her from the ties holding her back if she only had the courage to create it. The gallery buzz receded as Emily felt the aftershocks of the confrontation with David ripple through her. Standing there, the weight of the moment still clung to her, yet she realized it was merely a chapter amidst her canvas of existence. Her art had become her refuge, a place where she poured her heart, and used it as both a reflection of her struggle and a blueprint for her future. As she took a deep breath to center herself, memories of the tumultuous journey to this point surfaced. She had been lost before, wandering through unfulfilled dreams and disappointments. Her paintbrushes remained her constant companions, turning despair into colors and shapes, encapsulating every trial she encountered. Through art, she learned the power of expression, how even the most chaotic emotions could form something beautiful. Yet, confronting David was a different medium entirely. It was raw. It was painful. And while it struck deep chords of resentment within her, it also illuminated an unexpected truth. She had expected him to shatter her resolve. Instead, he had only strengthened it. In the moments following, the realization washed over her she didn't need to forgive David to move on. She could simply acknowledge their shared history and determine how it would shape her journey forward. It was liberating the way clarity often is. Emily understood that granting him absolution didn't mean she diluted her worth. It merely signified her intent to stop carrying the burden of his actions. As she turned to rejoin her friends, the allure of the gallery enveloped her once more like a warm embrace. They approached, faces alight with admiration and encouragement. Their support was a comforting balm against the turbulence swirling within her heart. It seemed impossible that moments earlier she had been locked in a mental battleground, and now there she stood, whole and alive. Emily, you are extraordinary, Karen exclaimed, her enthusiasm bubbling over. I can't believe how you handled that. You've grown so much. Emily felt the heaviness in her chest lift, and she found herself smiling. It's all a part of my process, she admitted, a hint of pride painting her tone. I've realized that moving forward means understanding my own strength and embracing it fully. Her friends surrounded her with affirmations, reinforcing her growth, and with each word, she could almost feel a layer of vulnerability melting away. There was no manual for this type of transformation, but she had crafted it herself, one stroke at a time. However, the reality of her newfound independence registered deeper truths about herself that still needed exploration. "Let us celebrate," Emily suggested, and the enthusiasm of her friends erupted into cheer. They filled the air with laughter, promises of plans for dinner, and flowers of possibility blooming in every direction. Yet within the celebration, Emily knew the path ahead would not be without challenges. This was merely the beginning of her reinvention. As she moved through the gallery, the vibrance of the pieces surrounding her struck a familiar chord, a reminder of how stories could change with the passage of time. Yet, another voice within her beckoned her to examine what lay ahead, the uncharted paths she had yet to traverse. What if she explored new themes in her work? What if the confrontation with David opened a door to deeper subjects, raw emotions tinged with the complexity of healing? She felt a whisper of creative urgency. Her journey could empower not only herself but also minimize the shadows that had followed her, a chance to influence others in the same way. Her journey had fortified her spirit. The prospect sent a thrill through her. She could imagine each canvas unfolding narratives that compelled her audience to engage with their truths, just as she had engaged with hers. Art as liberation. Art as therapy. There was power in storytelling, power she was beginning to wield. As the evening unfurled around her, vibrant discussions and raucous laughter filled the air. Yet Emily's mind was set on her art studio. The idea captured her thoughts with urgency, tethering her back to the transformational power of her craft. With her friends at her side, she made a bold decision, resolved to dive into an exploration of healing through art. What if this exploration could serve as a voice for those who felt voiceless? But just before she could leap into the creative abyss, uncertainty caught her. The echoes of past doubts reared their heads. What if her exploration led her to uncharted emotional territory, or worse, exposed vulnerability she thought she had laid to rest? As they left the gallery that night, her heart raced with anticipation and hesitation, a tantalizing mix that embodied the essence of true transformation. Would she dare to embrace this next leap into her artistic journey? One that could powerfully shape her narrative beyond what she believed possible? With the city lights twinkling around her, she wondered, would the bravest stroke of this new chapter lead her into further self-discovery, or would it reveal the shadows she still had not yet faced? Emily returned home that night with an electric mix of exhilaration and dread swirling within her. Each step felt vital, infused with the tensions of both anticipation and hesitation. The gallery, the confrontation with David, and the solidarity of her friends reverberated in her mind like echoes in an empty room. As she entered her art studio, a sacred space infused with the scent of turpentine and dried paint, she was met with her blank canvases waiting patiently for her next creation. Doubt tugged at her, whispering innuendos of inadequacy, questions flaring like a low flame in a dark room. Could she really channel her raw emotions into something meaningful? The fear of failing to articulate profound pain gnawed at her. What if the act of expression led her to deeper vulnerabilities? What if her artwork couldn't convey the richness of her experience? She shook her head, murmuring to herself to dismiss the doubts. Emily settled at her easel, fingers trembling with uncertainty. The dim light from her overhead bulb illuminated the pristine canvas before her, a blank slate teeming with endless possibilities and suffocating potential. Art as liberation, she reminded herself, drawing comfort from the idea that creativity served as a conduit for healing. She reached for her brush, its familiar weight grounding her as she dipped it into the cerulean blue. The first bold stroke a declaration against her fears. As the color spread, a vivid tempest began to swirl on the canvas. She lost herself in that moment, losing track of time as waves of emotion washed over her. A medley of blues highlighted distress, mixed with splashes of yellow that hinted at hope. The strokes grew more frenetic, mirroring her inner tumult. The brush danced across the canvas, echoing the chaos that had defined her existence. Suddenly, the image turned fragmented, chaotic, disjointed, a cacophony of colors that represented her confrontation with David. Each horizontal slash told a story she had never formulated, unearthing sentiments she kept buried. It felt cathartic, the way she surrendered herself to the rhythm of creation, and the nature of her past began to take shape before her eyes. Yet amid that frenzy, shadows circled. An image tempest must give way eventually to clarity. She hesitated, picturing the respect she had acquired from her friends, the chances she had yet to seize. Each friend represented a chapter of growth in her narrative, tales of lessons learned, reflection transforming struggle into strength. These considerations ignited a flicker of determination within her, a spark that refused to dim. Deep, hidden traumas beckoned for acknowledgement. She yearned to unravel them, to stitch them into the fabric of her art, reinforcing the power of collective healing. The whispers morphed into louder, consequential queries. Who would she become as an artist if she fully embraced her experience? If her truths became her medium? The moment crystallized. Emily sensed that the exploration of her vulnerabilities was a necessary risk, a profound decision that would not only redefine her art, but also reshape her destiny. The journey ahead wasn't merely a personal quest. It was a calling to amplify those who felt voiceless, to evoke feelings in others that they couldn't articulate. Yet an insidious concern snaked through her firmly set resolve. What if her journey forward exposed weaknesses she preferred to keep hidden? What if the act of unveiling her truth fractured the delicate balance she had fought so hard to establish? Breathless with anticipation and anxiety, Emily stepped back to survey her work. The colors pulsed, alive with possibility, reflecting a deeper narrative waiting to be explored. This wasn't just art, it was an invitation to confront herself, to challenge the shadows lurking in the corners of her heart. Resolute in her decision, she felt her artistry shift from a personal sanctuary to a platform of revelation. The looming question reverberated in her mind. Did she possess the courage to face the emotional upheaval that this endeavor could provoke? As she turned off the studio lights, her heart thudded with the intensity of her reflections. The journey awaited a profound excavation into her truth. Would she emerge stronger? Or would she find herself ensnared in past darkness? The stakes had escalated and boundaries had blurred. With the city slumbering outside her window, Emily contemplated the depths of her resolve, the unquenchable thirst for self-discovery. The question lingered in the stillness. How far was she willing to delve into the shadows that lay beneath her artistry? The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the studio, casting a golden hue over the remnants of the previous night's work. Emily awoke restless, her heart racing with the lingering echoes of her thoughts. The chaos of her confrontation with David still rippled through her like a stone cast into the stillness of a pond, and the urgency of her artistic journey weighed heavily on her. She needed clarity, yet uncertainty clung to her like a second skin. She brewed a strong cup of coffee, allowing its warmth to wrap around her. The scent filled the air as she stared at the canvas that had become both a release and a source of pressure. The vibrant tempest she had created mirrored the fervor within her, but it was now a reminder of her unresolved conflicts. Emily recognized that she faced more than just an artistic challenge. She was on the cusp of unveiling the intimate layers of her life. Determined to seize the day, Emily coated her brush with thick paint and approached the canvas once more. Each stroke felt like a battle, yet each clash with color and form whispered encouragement. She could hear her friends' voices, urging her to dive deeper, to express fully what lay beneath the surface. The inherent tension of these relationships both invigorated and conflicted her. Would exposing her vulnerabilities strengthen the bond she valued, or would it unravel them? With rising intensity, she flung herself into her work, recounting memories and emotions she had long held at bay. The figures took shape, ghostly silhouettes of the people who had populated her past. Among them, David floated eerily, an echo of the past confrontation. As she rendered him onto the canvas, the paint became thick with contention, each contour grappling with the weight of her resentment and betrayal. Was she revisiting her hurt to empower her art? Or was she merely reopening wounds that should have remained sealed? The question loomed large as her brush dripped paint. In her fierce need for authenticity, had she overlooked the boundaries that protected her fragile heart? Emily stepped back, eyes narrowing at the developing scene. It mirrored a clash of identities, hers versus the perceptions others carried. The desire to remain resilient intertwined with the fear of being misunderstood. Her fingers trembled, caught between the urge to erase the lines defining David and the reality that his presence was inseparable from her growth story. This tension was about to transform into something more than art. It was about self-discovery in its rawest form. What began as swirling emotions transformed into calculated choices as she began layering and blending, each application gaining depth and meaning. There was a liberation in recognizing that her truth could be a weapon against doubt. But with that power, a new narrative emerged. The impression that her emotional rawness could alienate those she cared about most. With a sharp inhalation, Emily grabbed the deck of postcards her friends had written for her after her gallery exhibition. Each one was a beacon of their faith in her journey. What if this very endeavor alienated them? What if portraying her reality contradicted their expectations for her artistry? The weight of this internal dilemma pressed heavily against her chest as she scanned the vibrant canvas. A decision loomed as her brush hovered, laden with dark hues that threatened to drown out the vibrancy she had infused into her art. Was she willing to forfeit the relationship she cherished for the sake of her authenticity? Just as she began to paint over David's figure, a sudden resolve surged through her. She set the brush down, feeling the tension of her doubts coalesce into a newfound clarity. What if honesty became the very foundation of strength in her relationships instead of division? With renewed vigor, she revisited the lighter shades of color, knowing she could construct compassion amidst her chaos. She might reveal her vulnerabilities, but she wouldn't let them define her. As she continued to paint, Emily's heart raced with the possibilities her creativity and friendships could ignite. But even as hope illuminated her vision, lurking on the edges of her consciousness was a stubborn thought. What if the moment she revealed this artwork at her next gathering would ignite more than just spirited discussions? What if it led to inevitable confrontations that would challenge her resolve? An air of something unfamiliar filled the studio, heightening the energy as she prepared for whatever lay ahead. Would her courage enable her to stand firm against the scrutiny of not just her peers, but also those who defined her past? With finality, she settled back into her painting, the edges of her narrative blurring with every deliberate stroke. A question pulsed insistently in her mind. When the time came, would she have the courage to present the truest version of herself, even if it meant facing the backlash of her own truth? As the hours passed, Emily immersed herself in the transformative energy of the studio. The colors on her palette seemed to vibrate, reflecting her inner turmoil as she contemplated her next steps not only in the painting but in her life. This artwork could serve as a mirror, capturing her fragmented emotions, but it also carried the weight of her relationships, her history, and her ambitions. Each brushstroke became a moment of reckoning, and she balanced on the precipice of who she wanted to be against the fears that tethered her to the past. Her mind wandered. Just beyond her paint-smeared hands was the unsettling notion of her upcoming gathering, a night filled with familiar faces and potential judgments. Would her friends recognize the authenticity of her struggle laid bare? Or would they perceive it as a betrayal of unsaid norms, a signal that she was shifting from the Emily they had always known? This anxiety clung to her like a shroud, suffocating her creative spirit. She stepped back from the canvas, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Every figure she painted wrestled with her, eliciting not just memories, but also thoughts of the relationships that might fracture under the weight of brutal honesty. These were treacherous waters she had waded into, exposed utterly to the possibility of rejection. Desperation gnawed at her stomach. Could she expose her true self without sacrificing everything she held dear? In that moment, clarity sparked within her like a match against darkness. She realized that she hadn't been just painting David or anyone else. She was also sculpting her desires and fears into existence. Her vulnerability was a gift rather than a weakness, with the potential to deepen her connections instead of severing them. The revelation became a lifeline, urging her to embrace the very uncertainty that had haunted her. Art as a conversation, she whispered to herself, testing the phrase against her thoughts. What if her work sparked dialogue instead of discord? Could it illuminate truths within her friends and, in turn, encourage them to address their own vulnerabilities? The notion sent a shiver of excitement through her. It was a risky invitation to journey together rather than apart. With a newfound resolve, Emily picked up the brush again, allowing the colors to flow more freely than before. Each line she drew, every blending hue, felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that she had hidden for too long. The vibrant rendering began to radiate, emerging as a collision of light and dark, pain and healing. The stakes felt impossibly high, yet she embraced the overwhelming fear. A gentle wave of confidence washed over her as she contemplated not just what her art would say about her, but what it might inspire in others. The people who surrounded her did not simply exist in the shadows of her past, they were willing to bear witness to her evolution, regardless of how daunting that path might be. Yet the horizon was fuzzy. What bonus truths had been left unsaid? A lingering thought gnawed at her. Anticipation buzzed beneath her skin as she considered the deeper conversations that could arise if she opted for truth. What if someone, even David, confronted her, challenging her art or the authenticity of her emotional journey? The idea ignited her spirit anew, pushing her to further explore not just the surface of her canvas, but the depths of her convictions. "This isn't just about me," she affirmed, and she painted with urgency and fervor. Emily frowned at the dark corner of the studio, where forgotten sketches languished. Perhaps they too had stories to share, untold narratives that could add depth to her artistic voice. The moment summoned a surge of creativity, compelling her to unearth those hidden revelations, making space for them in both her art and her life. The gathering was drawing closer, and she knew the moment of truth was approaching. As she considered the looming unveil, her heart echoed the same question. Could I direct my narrative not just through art but through words spoken out loud in front of those who mattered? With one last stroke, the eyes in the figures grew more defined, sharper edges revealing not just who they were but who they had become through her journey. As she gazed at the now familiar faces in her artwork, a single thought emerged with astounding clarity. The time had come to face the murky depths of her truth, not only for herself but for every soul entwined in her story. As the light began to fade in her studio, illuminating the vibrant colors, she stood back, her heart pounding with anticipation. What would happen when she finally sat with her friends and unveiled this tumultuous canvas? Would it ignite invigorating discussions, or would it fracture her relationships further? The air crackled around her as the canvas whispered possibilities, leaving Emily dizzy with fear and excitement. Could this be the moment she transformed vulnerability into a powerful exchange, bridging the gap between isolation and connection? The tension hung palpably in the atmosphere. Her next move would define not only her art but the very essence of her evolving identity. The next day, the sun spilled into her studio, painting the walls with a warmth that seemed to foster life into her anxieties. Emily sat before her canvas, now more than just a collection of colors. It stood as a definitive statement of her aspirations and fears. This was not merely a self-portrait but a roadmap of her internal landscape, an odyssey she could no longer skirt around. With each stroke, a sense of inevitability washed over her. The gathering would not just be a showcase of her art, it would be an unveiling of her very self. The transformation she had gone through in those flickering hours was palpable, yet questions still hovered. What truths lay beneath those shades? What fears would emerge from the depths when she revealed them to others? The reality of the night loomed larger, a manic mingling of both anticipation and dread. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply as if inhaling the very essence of her courage. In that moment, her resolve crystallized, and she opened her eyes, glaring defiantly at the canvas. "This is my voice," she asserted, more as an incantation than a declaration. Her thoughts veered towards David, the friend who had once captivated her attention and subsequently faded into the background. Would he see her? Would he recognize the evolution of her spirit, or would he dismiss it entirely? A pang of unresolved emotion tethered itself to the prospect of their encounter, mingling nostalgia with anxiety. The fear of judgment thrummed much louder when she thought of him, every interaction replaying in her mind like an old film without a satisfying resolution. While remaining anchored to the process, Emily poured her concerns into the artwork. Each layer became a tangible representation of her inner turmoil. She painted ripped edges and blurred lines, expressing the jaggedness of social connection and the often unseen complexities of identity. Unlike before, the form of escapism shifted from separation to confrontation, as she faced her internal narratives head-on and translated them onto the canvas. The moments in her studio were now defined by metamorphosis. What had once felt daunting transformed into exhilarating freedom. With every brushstroke, Emily began to see herself as a storyteller, and her painting as a novel in progress, shifting with the weight of unsaid words. It wasn't merely about the art. It was a vehicle that transported her disarray into meaningful connection. As the clock ticked steadily toward the gathering, she felt the urgency press against her. What if she could assert her voice, not just with the art on display but with spoken words? The very idea sent a rush of adrenaline through her. What if, in revealing her emotional truth, she became a catalyst for dialogue among her friends? It felt important, utterly essential. Even the possibility of discomfort and vulnerability became a driving force for Emily. But what if they turned away? What if the connection she sought shattered into silence? The notion gnawed at her, tinged with the risk failure always harbored. This is the moment when the door swings either way, she whispered to herself, guilt and longing twisting inside her stomach. She meticulously worked on the final details of her piece, every choice a new iteration of her strength. The figures she had painted now embodied more than past experiences, they encapsulated the emotional spectrum of conversations, left in the wake of hesitation. Binding the hues together, she contemplated the solace that could sprout from fear, and the clarity that could emerge in unearthing shared truths. The gathering was drawing near, and with it the jagged edges of her heart thumped in anticipation. She stood back, eyeing the piece as a spectator, gauging its potential impact not only on her but on all who would witness her unveiling. One last glance at the canvas ignited a spark within her. It was both an offering and a challenge. What if this metamorphosis did not result in division but rather in a profound understanding among her friends that could shift the ground beneath them? Watching shadows dance across the surface, she recognized a new cycle was beginning, one where her vulnerability could become the seed from which authenticity bloomed. In that electrifying moment, emotions surged through her. Anticipation, hope, fear, but most importantly, an undeniable sense of courage. Emily headed for the door of her studio, its threshold beckoning like an uncharted path. What awaited her on the other side? Would her art spark conversations of depth and meaning, or would it provoke discord among those she held close? The final preparations were merely a prelude to what promised to be an unparalleled confrontation. Here she stood, ready to step into the unknown. Would her narrative ignite change? Or would the intensity of vulnerability prove too great a threat in her quest for connection? The moment of truth awaited, trembling just beyond her reach. The gathering blurred the edges of noise and excitement as Emily stepped into the bustling room. Vibrant colors twinkled from her artwork, each vivid hue whispering her journey to those who paused to absorb it. Friends and familiar faces adorned the space, their presence invoking a conduit for connection that she had longed for amidst the threats of isolation. Heart racing with the anticipation of unveiling truths layered within her creations, she inhaled deeply, allowing the scent of canvas and paint to anchor her resolve. With each interaction, she felt the undercurrents of anxiety collide with determination. Her life's narrative was about to unfold in front of others. The moment was poised like an arrow drawn back, ready to release with momentum. Would her art serve as a bridge, leading her closer to the empathy she desired? Or would her honesty unveil wounds too raw to heal? As guests admired the textures on her canvases, murmurs of admiration ignited a spark within her. They truly saw her for the first time, not as a mere shadow of past disappointment, but as a multifaceted artist driven by resilience. Emily, each piece pulsates with emotion, greeted Mia, excitement lacing her words, and a swell of warmth unfurled in Emily's heart. It felt validating. Her journey transcended the confines of her pain, weaving into a tapestry of human experience. Gradually, as the night unfolded, her gaze found the familiar silhouette of David lingering on the periphery. Unbeknownst to him, he had become both an echo and a catalyst in her evolution. This moment was as etched in her heart as the very strokes on her canvases, the culmination of choices made and courage summoned. Would he challenge her or embrace the new facets of who she had become? Taking a steadying breath, she approached him, each step weighted with the gravity of their past. Her heart thundered as she caught his eye, the unspoken words rendering their familiarity raw yet poignant. "Emily," he started, a tentative softness lacing his voice. She fixed her posture, acknowledging the flicker of uncertainty passing through him. "This is my truth," she asserted boldly, her emotional foundation firm beneath her fragility. "I've dedicated my heart to reclaiming my voice through my art. I hope you see that tonight." The brightness of the gallery dimmed in comparison to the intensity swirling between them. David's gaze flitted over her pieces, recognition dawning on his face. "You've transformed," he murmured, an admiring tone of disbelief weaving into his admission. A flicker of hope ignited in Emily's chest. Could he perceive her as more than the woman he had deflated? "I have," she replied, determination mingling with the pride swelling within her. Leaving the past behind has allowed me to find the artist I am meant to be. I needed you to see me like this whole flourishing. As words washed over them, the air thickened with shared memories. David nodded slowly, and she caught a glimpse of understanding in his expression. I never wanted to cause you pain. I wanted you to understand that art could be a struggle too, he remarked, and the weight of their conversations felt lighter, if only for a moment. Emily felt a sense of liberation surging through her, realizing that confrontation had not been merely about addressing old wounds, but had become a vessel for new beginnings. True art reflects struggles, David. Pain inspires creation, but I won't let it tether my soul anymore. Each word was a stitch in the fabric of her authenticity, wrapping around her newfound strength. The light in David's eyes flickered as if a significant truth was dawning upon him. I think I finally understand, he said, his voice low but charged with sincerity. You must tell your story without veils. I shouldn't have silenced that voice. In that exchange, Emily realized her progress lay not only in artistic expression, but in owning her narrative, granting herself the freedom to articulate her truth without fear of judgment. As the evening progressed, Emily rallied the courage to speak about her art to the gathering, addressing the room filled with friends who had witnessed her metamorphosis. As she shared her intentions behind each piece, the atmosphere thickened with shared vulnerability. The space erupted with conversations, laughter, and revelations birthed from her journey. Understanding rippled through the crowd, their hearts swelling with empathy that resonated with her sentiment. This was the moment she had longed for, transformation not in solitude but in connection. Emily knew these bonds nourished her growth, reaffirming the communal essence of healing. Each dialogue sparked growth, illuminating paths for others to share their journeys, the very connections that would weave new narratives away from isolation. As she stepped back from the canvas, a sense of completion settled within her. The night had become an unveiling not solely of art but of human connection, revealing the complex blend of joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability. Each piece resonated through the walls of her heart and emerged as a testament to her journey. She felt whole, acknowledging all that had come before as fertile ground for her evolving future. The applause echoed in the gallery as her friends showered her with admiration, cascading energy that further emboldened her resolve. This was not just a celebration of her art, but a definitive testament to her growth, a symbol of empowerment that echoed through her very essence. With David by her side and her friends surrounding her, Emily felt a deep fulfillment wash over her. She had conquered the shadows of her past, and instead of allowing her scars to mar her identity, she had used them to illuminate her path. In reclaiming her voice, she had forged connections stronger than any narrative. She had proven that vulnerability, when met with courage, could ignite transformation. And in that moment, Emily stood confident, recognized, and solidly fulfilled, a woman who had forged her identity against the odds, brimming with hope, and onward to a bright future that lay just beyond the canvas of her life. Now is the time to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you further. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every interaction makes a difference in reaching those who need to hear these transformative tales. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is just as vital as each story shared. Reach out, connect, and let us grow together.